everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Tonight, my guest is returning for the second time. Amy Ames is here. She is a wildlife, landscape, and adventure photographer based in North Carolina. She's drawn to the wild, remote places, from snow-covered peaks to quiet coastlines. Amy captures both the quiet intensity of wildlife and the sweeping beauty of rugged landscapes, with a special love for cold climates and mountain terrain. At the heart of her work is a deep respect for wild places and a genuine desire to share their stories. Whether she's in the field, traveling, or leading workshops, Amy invites photographers to slow down, to look closer, and to connect more meaningfully with the natural world. You can find her and connect with her through her website at amyamesphotography.com. And if you're on Instagram, you'll find her at Point Ames and Shoot. In tonight's presentation, 5 Lessons Photography Taught Me, Amy will share insights about her photographic journey, how photography has shaped the way she sees the world and herself. Amy, I so appreciate you coming back. I followed you all last week and probably a little bit longer than that while you were in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And so I imagine you're a little tired, but yet you still are here. So thank you for sharing the free time that you do have with this.
Thank you for having me again. It's so fun to be here. I always love the crowd that you have here on your show. So,
Yeah. Well, all right. If I glossed over anything, just fill in the blanks. If there's something in your bio that I missed that you want to make sure, I did mean to ask you, do you do a newsletter?
I do a newsletter, yes, and there's a sign up on my website for the
Yeah.
newsletter.
All
Yeah.
right. So, um, you can do that, or if you want to stick your email in the chat, I'll make sure she gets a copy of that. So, other than that, Amy, it's yours.
Okay, great. All right. So we are talking tonight about the 5 things that photography has taught me about real life. So, like so many of you guys that are here tonight, I'm sure I am incredibly grateful and thankful for all of the lessons that I've learned through photography, not just about storytelling with images, but so many life lessons that carry on over into the real world that I thought it would be a fun and different kind of topic to talk about that isn't talked about that often. So that's how I came up with tonight's stuff to talk about. So you did a pretty good job of describing me and telling what I do. So I like to think I'm an observer, a student of nature, a traveler. I love to teach photography. I teach on Women's Photography Circle. I teach workshops and I do some private mentoring now also. So I do wildlife photography and landscape photography both, and both of those are going to be included in my presentation tonight. And you said it best when you said I love cold places best. So lots of my pictures are from very cold places. So we're going to talk about the 5 guidelines that have shaped my photography, the 5 principles that I've learned: patience, perspective, perseverance, presence, and purpose. So, and I didn't purposely come up with all P words. It's funny, as I was thinking about this over the last several months after you asked me to be on the show, I realized when I started thinking pretty hard that they all started with P's. So somehow we ended up here. Um, Photography hasn't shaped just how I make the images, but it's also shaped how I live. And that's, again, like I said before, I'm incredibly grateful for all of the lessons that I have learned through photography. So, the first one I want to talk about is patience. And nature does not hurry, and neither should we as photographers or as people in general. So, I think patience is one of those things that many of us are not born with. And I can tell you for sure that I was born into one of the most impatient families out there, and it comes by me very naturally to be very impatient. So, this has been much of an extreme change for me to try to learn to be patient. And with nature, we really do have to be patient. So, so many reasons why, but in landscape, it's there's, you know, all sorts of patients that has to be done, whether you're doing astrophotography, the Northern Lights, waiting for wildlife to do something. This particular night, Susan's on here. She was with me this night. We had traveled all the way across the world and traveled on the wrong day, showed up for a workshop and got off the plane ready to go to bed and realized that that was the only night of our workshop that we were going to be on that we were going to be able to photograph the Northern Lights. So took an extreme amount of patience and perseverance, which we'll talk about in a little bit later, um, to get through that night for sure. So nature always requires lots of patience. One of the first workshops that I went on years ago was with Tom Mangelson, and he told me one time on that workshop that he once waited 30 days in Yellowstone, and I think it was a bobcat that he told me he was waiting to see, but he went to the same place for 30 days. And I remember that making such a big impression on me that he actually would do that. But then now it all makes sense because we can't always get what we want exactly when we want it. So definitely a good life lesson. Nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished. I love that quote that I found while I was doing some research for this. So this particular day, I was in Salt Lake City where I lead a workshop in the spring, and I love the mountains there as a backdrop. That's one of the reasons why I love that area so much, and I love the texture of this grass. And so I basically planted myself in this particular spot and decided that I was going to sit there until something happened, that I was going to be able to capture it all together. So lots of patience, waiting just for this to happen, but so many ways that patience comes into play with photography, especially nature photography. So, again, this was one of those things where waiting for sunset and you never know what you're going to have for a sunset, but so much patience for the weather to align, the sunset or sunrise to align, and then the wildlife to also align into exactly what you want it to do. So, lots of patience required for this situation, and any sunrise and sunset can take lots of patience. This was actually just last week at the end of my trip in Yellowstone, and um, we had been trying to get ravens on a lot of our shots this year, and many of my groups didn't have a chance to see ravens at all. And you never know what you're going to get in nature. You can hope for the simplest of things like ravens, and they don't show up. So we finally had a chance with this raven that I really, really loved the setting that he was in, and I knew I wanted the background to show like the mountains in the background, and I liked the textures around him. And but took about probably 30 to 45 minutes that we sat and photographed this guy before I got exactly what I wanted. So lots of patience for that. And this is just another example of I had a goal a couple of summers ago that I really, really, really wanted to photograph spoonbills and took in my head, I want to say it was 25 trips down to the destination where I traveled back and forth to that whole summer. It wasn't really that long, but it was a lot of patience to get exactly what I wanted. And as I was looking for the exact right picture that I wanted to show in the presentation, I came across so many different pictures of the spoonbills that were so terrible that it took to get to this picture. So again, just lots of patience is needed for and then this was just this summer when I went to Norway to Svalbard, and we this was our first polar bear that we spotted on the trip, and he roamed around. We watched him from a very, very far away distance for quite some time. But I saw this rock and I saw the ice above it, and I knew that I really wanted to capture this image in a certain way. So took a lot of time to wait and lots of shots to get him in the exact position that we wanted, but it was worth the wait when we finally got him where he was. So, and this is one of my favorite spots in Yellowstone that I photograph every year when I'm there. Very rarely does the photo actually work out, though. This is called Christmas Tree Rock. I photographed it again this year. Every year we photograph Christmas Tree Rock. Last year, on a day that happened to be negative 45 degrees, the stars aligned where the sun hit exactly the right way and the mist hit behind the tree in exactly the right way. And you can actually see what's Christmas Tree Rock right there. So, again, lots of patience. Sometimes we have to take pictures 50 times before we get exactly what we want or the vision that we have in our head. So lots and lots of patience needed for that. So my life lesson with patience that, comes from photography is if you wait long enough, what you're meant to see will actually reveal itself. So it's not always instant, and it's always worth the patience when we get it. So the second P is perspective. There's so many different ways to interpret the word perspective. I mean, the first way is perspective of how you get low or get high or where you see an image. And that is definitely one way to think of perspective and something that's important and shape many things. But there's also other different ways to think of perspective too. So there's always a bigger story to tell in our perspective. And one of the things that I've really tried to focus on the last couple of years is not just zooming in and, these are king eaters, not just showing the picture of the king eaters, but also showing their environment and a different perspective that other people might not see when they go to take pictures. Another just example of perspectives different. I've gotten a lot into drone photography the last couple of years, and the reason why I like drone photography so much is because it shows a different perspective than you normally see from the ground when you're taking pictures. So that is the appeal of that to me. What looks like nothing can be something incredible from a different angle. So I think that's important to remember all the time, not just in photography, but everything in life. But this particular situation, I was in Washington State last year, and we had these short-eared owls flying all around us and, landing on signs, landing on posts. Um, and I mean, they were okay images, and this image would have been okay, but we all sort of took the angle of trying to get some bushes in front of us and create a little bit of a texture around the owl instead of just having a straight on image. And just that slightly different angle created a completely different perspective that was a little bit more outside of the box than we normally would think of. Photography literally shifts your perspective, wide angle versus telephoto, close versus far. So this is what I like to consider more of an environmental shot right here. But seconds before, I was taking this shot right here. So just the difference between what's happening, when we're up close with the wildlife in this situation versus this situation goes to show you how just a slightly different perspective can really put things into a totally different light as how we see our wildlife. So lots of different ways around that. And this is just another example. This was when I was at the North Pole this summer, way up. I think we were up at like 72 degrees latitude, or I might be off with my numbers, but we were very far up towards the North Pole. And I really, really, really wanted to bring my drone on this photography trip with me for this shot, and exactly this shot. And the reason was I felt like there was no way that I really was going to be able to show those icebergs and show how they related to our ship other than to be able to show it from above. So perspective can be so important for things like that. And I have, lots of pictures of icebergs taken from the boat and taken from around but nothing really does it for me like this, where you actually really see what it's like up there in the pack ice and what that ice is like. Again, just another perspective in Yellowstone and anywhere we're shooting wildlife. It's very, very common to want to get close up to our wildlife and just take portraits. And I felt like this picture really showed the environment of Yellowstone. We've got, a dead tree here with snow cover on it. We've got a snow-covered evergreen tree on the left side, and then we've got a mountain in the back side. And that perspective was just different than the old Amy would have always done, but really trying to create more of environmental stuff now, but with a nice wider lens perspective. In wildlife, it's important to see the ecosystem's not just a single animal. So again, the old me was really drawn to this, and I still think there's a purpose for portraits like this, but I also think that showing the environment and the whole ecosystem is very important, and partially for education of people as a photographer, I think it's our job to educate others on the things that we're seeing in the world so that they care more about them. So um, and being small in a huge landscape can put you in a different place. So this was in Yellowstone a couple weeks ago, and I want to say this particular day, we had a whole day with the wolves, and really not a whole lot of great shots that day with the wolves, but this particular one I loved with the environment. He's tiny in the frame, but I love the fact that you can tell there's a river there, there's trees there. You see his path that he's walking, and I just really love the perspective that this gives versus the up close shot that most people really generally want when they're going for wolf shots. And my life lesson is that photography taught me that if something feels big and heavy, I probably need a wider lens. So it's kind of how I relate to life in general through learning through photography. So it's been a good life lesson. Perseverance is my third um, P that I want to talk about, and the third life lesson that I have learned through photography. Perseverance has been big in my life since my kids were little, to be honest. I used to sing a song about perseverance when they were young and drive them crazy. And I feel like it's important in everything that we do in life, but especially it's important in photography. So, wildlife photography is full of failures, bad light, missed shots, and empty days. I mean, how many times have we gone out in the field to photograph a bird in a certain area and we get there and there's no birds there? Or we go to Yellowstone for a certain particular reason, and then we don't have that particular thing that we see, or we might go out to shoot something and then it rains all day. So many reasons why we can end up with empty days, but it's important that we not give up. And it's also important to remember that the best moments rarely come easy. So this particular day was an extremely cold day. This photograph took a lot. I had seen photos similar to this before. I knew I really wanted it. I knew I wanted it in the snow. This was taken in Maine at Acadia National Park. And it was a very hard shot to get. It took several hours in this pouring snow to get exactly what I wanted. So perseverance paid off there. This was my first trip to Costa Rica last year, and it poured down rain the entire first day that we were there, which happened to be the day that we saw all of the monkeys that we really wanted to see. So, again, sometimes we go to these exotic places and the weather doesn't behave like we really want it to behave. And so it's important to remember that sometimes those real life days are actually what we're meant to photograph and show the world what it's really like. For anyone who has photographed before in Salt Lake City at Antelope Island, you'll know it takes a lot of perseverance to get these shots. So this little guy is just giving us a touch of the fact that he's in mud. If you see that there's mud on his feet, not only is there mud, there's also a lot of bugs, a lot of biting bugs, and there's nothing pretty about photographing on the Great Salt Lake. So you can create some amazingly gorgeous images, but it takes a ton of perseverance and it's worth every bit of it to me. I love it. It's something I crave. Like I can't wait to get back there this year and be back doing it again, but it's not easy when you're there and right in the moment. It can be very challenging. So, this particular day, I took my son to Alaska this year for the first time, and we had 3 days, it was September, of pouring down rain and freezing cold weather for the entire time that we were there. So, we pretty much froze our tails off, and he learned about how not everything is glamorous in photography, but basically all we got were rain shots and almost frostbite feet by the time we got back. So lots of perseverance was needed for that. And shooting in the South in the summer definitely requires a lot of perseverance because the bugs and the humidity, just like I know it's like that in Texas for you guys, it's not easy and takes a lot of work. So for anyone who thinks it's glamorous, it is not a glamorous job. The first time I went to COVID to this particular area was 2 years ago. Went to Alaska. I'm sorry. I caught COVID from somebody else who was on the trip and spent the entire trip fighting a COVID case of COVID that was terrible and almost makes me feel sick just looking at the pictures. But again, just one of those things that we can't help is we have to persevere through sometimes when we do things like that. And then just I wanted to talk about the perseverance that I've had to learn new things. And one of those was drone photography that I sort of dreamed of having shots like this of places that I went. And it's taken a lot of time to get there and be able to feel like I knew what I was doing, but it's worth it. A couple of years ago, I went on a girls' trip with a couple friends of mine to Washington State. And the first night that we were there, we decided we were going to do some night photography. And it had been a couple years since I had done it. And I felt like I was ready and used to do it all the time. So I really felt like I was, up for the game and got up there and we got in the dark and I fiddled with the settings and couldn't remember how to get things in focus properly and was so frustrated and spent the first hour probably throwing a temper tantrum that drove everybody around me crazy until I finally remembered, stay calm, we got to get things cool and remembered exactly how to get things focused and do things. But when I look at the shot, all I can think about is the temper tantrum that I threw beforehand and how hard it was to get to this point. But when it finally happened, we had the most amazing situation that to photograph. Not a great nature situation where a fire erupted that night, but um, really fun to be able to witness something like that. So if you quit on the hard days, you miss the magic. So that's sort of my life lesson with perseverance is that things don't come easy ever for anything in life that we do, especially photography. And we have to remember to not give up on the days that things seem extra hard for anything that we're doing in life. My fourth P is presence. So I think that's a big topic for a lot of people nowadays. Really funny story. I'm going to start off with this one, but a couple years ago, I went to Norway for a workshop, and I had bugged the workshop instructor before we went several times about this particular hut that I had seen pictures of that I really wanted to photograph. And so, of course, he made sure that we went and we were able to photograph this hut. And we were there, all standing there, taking the photograph that we wanted to take. And then after we got the shot, we decided we wanted to go just a little bit closer to the hut and take this shot. And as we were there taking the photograph, this man comes running up to us and he starts screaming at us and he's like, "That's not the shot. That's not the shot." And he was basically having a full-blown like screaming fit at us that we weren't taking the right shot. And we all just got the biggest chuckle out of him because, first of all, there's no one right shot. But second of all, he basically was running from place to place, taking the Instagram shot that was the shot, that people take that you see online, and that's what you want to take. But we weren't trying to do that. We were trying to slow down and see all of the beauty at this particular place that we were. So I think it's really important to remember to slow down when we're shooting, whether it be landscape or wildlife, and not rush past the beauty because there's so much beauty to be seen in nature and it might not be exactly what you think is the shot because you've seen it on Instagram. So that was a very good lesson for all of us. So this particular morning was in Maine, and we had an agenda of where we were going, but we walked outside of our hotel room and saw this, and I was sticking to my agenda because it was important that we stick to our timetable and rushing everybody along. And all of a sudden, everybody said, "Wait, why are we rushing? Like, look at this beautiful sunrise and this magnificent spot that we have right in front of us." So sometimes we all need our own reminders of not to rush things, and it's important to see all the beauty around. Early mornings alone in quiet landscapes and sunrises can make anything feel still and sacred. So I think it's just, I just wanted to remind that sometimes sunrises and sunset can be the most important time to really be present. I've tried recently more so than ever to really put my cell phone down and try to disconnect from the world. It's easy to do sometimes when you're in places like a national park where there is no cell service, but I think it's really important, even when you are in cell service, to really try to disconnect and um, be in the moment and be present with where you are in nature versus just halfway being there. And being present allows us to see the story unfold differently than we might generally see it other ways. So I think it's a great reminder for that. This particular situation was in Costa Rica, and we were just on a boat killing time and floating down somewhere, very quietly sitting and really enjoying the fact that we were there and had no agenda when this little guy popped out and plopped himself down in front of us. And it ended up being one of my favorite images from the trip. And if we had hurried and kept stuck to our timetable and our agenda, then this whole moment would have been missed. So it was a really bonus treat to get to have this happen. And I've learned when to shoot and when to stop and just witness. This was maybe last year in Yellowstone when these wolves, not a great shot at all right here, but these wolves were across the river from us and roaming along the river, and they were all howling to each other. And really witnessing that and seeing that was so much more important than the picture that I got, which is not really a great picture. And so it was one of those times where just putting your camera down and watching what's happening in front of you sometimes is better than getting the perfect shot that might not even be so perfect. So this was this year what I thought was going to be one of the most absolutely exciting moments in Yellowstone. And we had I've taken photos at this spot. In fact, I meant to put my favorite shot of this is the famous Tom Murphy tree in Yellowstone. And I love taking participants here to this tree because it's never the same any day that you go there. But I pretty much squealed in complete delight this year when I realized that there was a whole trail of bison, the herd that was about to walk through the tree. I'd seen a picture a couple years ago of some bison going along the ridge up here, but then I later learned that they were photoshopped into the image, and I just couldn't believe what was happening before my eyes. But actually, in the end, I didn't end up liking my images, and they're okay, but nothing like if you've seen my regular Tom Murphy tree. Like it just wasn't anything very exciting. So it was a lesson in learning to watch and be excited for what's happening, but we don't always have to have a perfect photo to go along with it. So. And my life lesson in this is that some moments are meant to be felt, not photographed. So, especially situations like this guy here, where sometimes the world happens so fast around us that we can't always photograph it like we want to. And so, it's important to put your camera down, just like it's important to feel everything in the world. And sometimes that's more important than getting the perfect shot. So, my last P is purpose. And we all have a purpose here. And I think as photographers, we have an extremely important purpose. As an educator, I feel like we have a purpose. Um, Lots of different purposes in the world, but it's important for me to not just take pictures, but also to tell stories. Storytelling has been very important to me in photography for years and years, but just one of the many purposes that I feel like we have as photographers for educating the rest of the world. This was a great story this year in Yellowstone. You can almost tell by looking at the picture how cold it was. You can almost tell you're in Yellowstone by the steam and the geyser that you're seeing the stuff in the back. You can see that you have frosty bison, so we know it was an extra cold morning. Um, the bison here was a fascinating situation that we were watching where two of the bison were in a very early stage of um, their cycle, and a male was herding them around and chasing them. And we watched them for probably 5 hours as we were watching wolves, where the male was chasing the women around and sort of wearing them out and walking all around in this circle. So lots to go along with this story here for sure, but definitely my purpose here was educating about the weather, where we were. It's important to me to do work that feels meaningful, not just profitable. So, as a photographer, I'm in this because I love this job, not just because I am trying to make money on this job. So, I try really hard to do things that make me happy. I try hard to take photos for myself that make me happy, not just, what I think other people are going to like, not just what I think Instagram's going to like or Facebook, social media. It's important to also do things that are meaningful to you, as well as the people who follow you. So I lead workshops, but not just to teach, but to inspire connection to nature. I feel like we have a very big disconnect right now to nature, especially with our kids. The more electronics have come into play, and the more electronics have come into play for adults, even as well as children. I hope that as a photographer and as an educator, that by showing people pictures, it teaches them about nature that they might not necessarily get to see otherwise. So, seeing wildlife up close has changed how I think and care about the planet. So, definitely before I was a photographer, I cared about the planet, but um, when I turned into a nature photography and, became so interested in all these places and started to go photographing, it's definitely brought about a whole new different meaning in my life for the care and concern that I have about our planet. And I think it's common for photographers. And I think as, photographers, when we're able to show people pictures who might not be able to go, this was in Antarctica, so people who might not be able to go, but can hopefully understand why our world is so fragile right now. And by seeing pictures from other people, it encourages other people to care about our planet more than they normally would. So, photography has deepened my love for conservation and protecting what I photograph. So, I think that that is also very common for nature photographers. Of course, the more we photograph things, the more attached we become and the more educated we are. And the more this was last year, we were out photographing eagles, and I'm sorry if I'm gonna just kind of go past that quickly. um, some people have a really hard time looking at that photo, but it's one of those things where I think that we can use our photography to educate, people about things that are happening in the world that they might not actually know about it. So I used that picture to write to the parks department at our local park where that photo was taken. It's very common that fishing lure and fishing wires are left around that particular area, and I've encouraged them to try to do like posters around and stuff for people that don't speak English that might um, not realize what an impact they're having on the environment. So just another example of how we can use our photography to educate other people. But my camera didn't just give me images, it gives me a reason to care more deeply about the world. So I'm eternally grateful for that. So again, I talked about patience and the life um, learning with that is to trust timing, perspective, widen our frames, perseverance to keep going, presence to be here now, purpose to live and create with intention. So those are the things that I feel like photography has taught me. And photography didn't just teach me how to take better pictures, but it also taught me how to live better. So I'm always grateful for that. And we are back to the beginning so quickly.
Oh, um, I could have listened to you for another hour. Honestly, I was like, you're so eloquent. And this presentation, just for myself, man, you very inspiring, Amy. Very
Oh, thanks.
inspiring.
You're very sweet.
Gosh, the photos are beautiful, but the words that you put to them, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it just struck me, and I'm like, make that into a bumper sticker. Something about use a wider lens. That was the last part of it. I can't remember
Oh
exactly
yeah,
what you
yeah.
said, but I just thought, gosh, she really hit on something for me because sometimes we really do get in a rush and we look at just what's in front of us, and it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to kind of give up on things, and that those words really just kind of resonated with me tonight. So thank you for that. Um, all right. I've got two questions that I saw. Let me ask you to take down your screen. Let me find those questions.
Okay.
Make sure there aren't any. It's mostly about I'm going to read this to you and I'm going to share this. Um, Lisa Izzy wrote, your presentation was exactly what I needed today. Not only were your photos amazing, but I absolutely loved the messages and quotes you wove in as well. So that's just, I eloquent, Lisa. Thank you for putting those into words for me too.
Did I stop sharing my screen properly? Sorry.
No, I
I
still see
didn't.
the Zoom thing. Yeah.
Okay, shoot. Sorry.
Oh,
Hold
thank
on.
you, Marianne Ford. It was when things feel heavy, use a wider lens. Yeah, I
Yes,
love that.
yes.
Okay, so the two questions, let me find them, were locations. The very first, I don't know if you'll remember, it was the very first owl photo. Carolyn was curious if that was in Skagit Valley. Do you?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
You guys know the same owl? That's,
It's a pretty common place in
oh,
Washington for people
okay.
to go photograph. And I'm so sorry, I'm still sharing my screen. Will you remind me? Oh, stop share. Sorry, sorry.
There
Here
you
we go.
go.
Is that better now?
Yeah, let me see.
Okay.
I put my screen down so I can see. Now you're good.
Okay.
The second question is also a location. Where did it go? It's from Egidio. And I'm sorry, no, it wasn't. It's from Kevin. He wanted to know where the penguins photos were taken. Was that
Those were in Antarctica, and I
Antarctica?
don't
Okay.
remember exactly where we were in Antarctica, but I only went to Antarctica. I didn't go to the Falkland Islands or South Georgia or any of those. So it was definitely in the proper Antarctica. So
Oh,
Mhm.
such beautiful photos. I'm just okay, selfish. Is Antarctica one of the workshops you do, or was that something you did?
No, I would love to do one to Antarctica, but it's not really on my agenda right now. So it's such an expensive trip and
Yeah.
kind of totally different than anything else that I've done. So
Okay.
not right now.
Okay. Well, let me scroll through. Oh, okay. There's one. Somebody's lurking in there. Carolyn wants to know what's the story of the photo on the wall behind you, the bear.
Oh, interesting. So that is from the very first wildlife workshop that I went on. And I can't remember if last time I was here if I shared this story or not, but my first wildlife photography workshop that I went on, I had just visited Yellowstone National Park with my kids and my in-laws for the very first time. And we went in the Tom Mangelsson Gallery in Jackson. And I wanted to buy a print desperately while we were there. And my husband would not let me buy the print, but he agreed that he would buy me the tools to learn how to do wildlife photography. I was a family photographer at the time and a newborn photographer. So that's how my journey started in nature and wildlife photography. A couple months later, we had just refinanced a house one day, and I was sitting on the porch and scrolling through Facebook when he posted that he was Tom Mangelsson, that he was going to Alaska, and he had one spot that had opened up for his workshop. So I jumped on it, went on the workshop, and that picture that's behind me is from that workshop in Alaska. It's at Silver Salmon Creek Lodge, and it was the very first workshop I ever went on, and that workshop was so life-changing for me and kind of where it all started. It was one of those things where I swore it was to be a one and done trip. And, I know it's expensive, I kept saying, but it'll just be one and done. And then here I am, a couple years later, totally involved. That was 2017. So more than a couple years later, almost 10 years later, but head over heels and traveling all over the place and loving every second of it. So that's where it started.
Okay, so I'm gonna, Kevin wants a little bit more detail about the penguins. He says Antarctica is a big place. Can you narrow it down for him? So if you,
I could look it up and get that information back to you, but oh, Susan she was with me. I think she
Half Moon
just,
Island
oh, maybe so.
is what she's saying.
Okay, she's probably right. So there you go.
We're gonna go with Susan Wright. Thanks for
Yes,
helping.
thank you, Susan. She looks back. Awesome. Good job.
Yeah, good job. All right. So I don't think there are any other questions. I have to say thank you for doing this and giving up your Wednesday because before we got on, started recording, Amy is getting ready to turn around and go on another trip. So she, to squeeze us in and get this for us tonight was just, it's a gift. So thank you so much. Time is something that you don't get back, but I
Oh,
so
thank you. It was my pleasure
appreciate
to be
that.
here.
Yeah. Okay. So Andy Brunner, you took that beautiful photo of that white weasel thing in the snow. What was that? Was it an ermine?
It was an ermine, yeah. That
Ermine.
was in Yellowstone last year, and they're very, very hard to see and very fast. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy, crazy couple of moments, and sort of fit the way that I felt about that. That I think I was talking about presence at the time. That sometimes we just need to watch the situation unfold. And I have a much better video from my phone of that situation than I did of pictures. So,
They're so cute. Yeah, I was in Yellowstone and I'm like, that's the one animal I want. And we didn't even see one.
yeah.
Okay, so you and I were trying to figure out when you were here last. So I looked it up. It was October 30th, 2024.
Okay, so it
So
has
we
been a
got,
couple of years. Yeah.
yeah, and I should have, I think it was Yellowstone where the wild things are. So if
Yep.
y'all need
Yes.
more of Amy, that you can go look at that video that is on YouTube. So October 30th, 2024. So I'm gonna get you back.
Mhm.
Please come
Thank you.
back. Um, all right. Let me go ahead and close out this session. And if you have a second or two, let people come back into the room. All right. Next week, Warren Capps will be here to share his presentation. So you want to go on a photo tour. So he's going to talk about things that will help you prepare for taking that first or taking a photo trip. So have a nice night, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.